Thanks for waking up with us.
It was a divine plan. America didn't happen by chance. All this was part of the divine plan that this would come about. The Moors then had a plan for a new world order. A one world, new world order. That was a Moorish plan originally. The Europeans inherited that plan through the Masonic Lodge, which was the vehicle by which we civilized and taught the Europeans. And so now when we hear them saying it, we ready to throw out the baby with the bathwater, thinking it's from them. No, we originally laid out that plan for one divine world order. And they merely inherited it. And when we fell off, they still espoused it. Even though many of them are not carrying out right and exact, because you got to understand that the European Masons who run this government, who run the international scene, that they're under certain oaths and obligations. There's certain things that they can't do. There's certain things that they can't speak on. They're functioning more or less in a custodial capacity or fiduciary capacity. They will make custodians. When we were falling from power, we said, all right, you see this throne? We're going to make you custodians of this throne. You're going to become the keepers of the light, not the bearers of the light. We were the bearers of the light. We was one who was able to actually go out there and re-educate the whole human family of planet Earth. We made them keepers, which means that it's but so much they could speak on. You look at the degree structure. Water freezes at what? 32 degrees, right? Well, the highest they go is 32 degrees, which means what? Their wisdom, their water, their wisdom is locked up. It's froze shut. They can't get out here teaching like we can. It's froze shut. And maybe once in a while, one of them may be honored with the honorary 33rd degree, and then they throw it out a little more. Maybe they can say a few things, but not too much. You see what I'm saying? And so we put those Europeans in power when we fell from power, because at that time the Catholic Church, through the Franciscan and Dominican orders, was destroying everything that the Moors had built up. All the civilization, all the high science that we had developed and cultivated and built up, they was destroying on a global level. And so we put the Europeans and Masons in power. We refer to them as the mystic Turks, or chief protectors of the sacred shrine. The shrine of what? The shrine of Moorish science, of Moorish civilization that we had cultivated for so long. We put them there in charge of it. And so they're custodians. And then sometimes happens that custodians forget their place and they start to think that they're the ones. But we got to remind them, y'all not the ones. Y'all the custodians. Y'all was to hold it and preserve it until we wake back up and then get this thing back on its original divine plan. So we are to convey to America that we're not about overthrowing this. No. As a matter of fact, we're about getting this thing back functioning on its original divine purpose. Because if we don't, it's going to be destroyed. As you see what's happening right now on a global level. America's going down a path now of self-destruction. And if we don't wake up and first save ourselves, and then in turn save America, it's going to be all over with.
How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to Stand Focused for Jesus. Today is Monday, October 4th, 2021. It's later today in comparison to the video that you will see, well, the video before this that I also recorded on the same day. The reason I keep on sharing that clip in a lot of videos is because it's super relevant to things that are currently going on and things that are going to be happening in the very near future in regards to what we call the New World Order, Nasara, Gersara, the Great Reset, the Global Reset, UBI, Universal Basic Income, all these things that tie in together. So I wrote this post, and it says the first nation to recognize the modern United States as a nation was Morocco, a Moorish nation. Now today, Moorish has become directly connected with what we call black. There's many reasons for that, but it has more so been directly connected with Islam. It's been directly connected with Islam. Not just Islam as we know it over there, but Islam in the sense of Moorish law. I think it stands for, if I remember correctly, we'll look at it, I, self, am law. I, self, am law, and master. But we'll look at it just to make sure. So, Morocco is a kingdom, constitutional monarchy in northwestern Africa with a largely Muslim population. We know who the Moors are collectively, right? Well, who did the modern founding fathers rebel against? The kingdom monarchy of England. Who was ruling during that time period? Black monarchy of Israelite lineage. King James and his family were ruling during that time period. They fell, then you had the next monarchy come in, and then they fell until eventually you had the modern day founding fathers of America who rebelled against them. So they ultimately rebelled against Israelite monarchy, who was in positions, we as a people were in positions of power and authority, but God stripped us of that position little by little, more and more and more and more and more because of our disobedience. So all throughout the history, we see Moors. When we look at King Leopold and everything that he did, we see the Moors with the fez hat. You know, that ties into Masonry, Freemasonry, and these different things. The Moors plotted against Israel with other nations. They helped them rise to power to come against us by giving them a lot of the ancient knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Then they turned around and used it against them. This is why they tell you that the New World Order is a Moorish plan from the beginning. This is one reason, along with many other reasons I keep on telling you and prophesying to you, that the Antichrist will be what we call a black man. Some people believe it's ex-President Barack Obama, even though he's, people say he's half white, what we would call half white. We still consider him black. Antichrist, I do not believe. And I do not believe the Bible supports that he's going to be this prototypical white Jesus, white Messiah coming to save the world. For many reasons. One of them is because we know who true Israel is, and he wants to rule over true Israel. And Israel knows that the Messiah is not white. So why would they accept a white Antichrist coming as the Christ? That doesn't make any sense. So I want to go to my next point. I want to break down this treaty that America made with Morocco a little bit more to see the connections with everything. So there was a treaty that was made, and it's called the Moroccan American Treaty of Friendship. In December 1777, interesting date, the Moroccan Sultan Mohammed III included the United States in a list of countries to which Morocco's ports were open. Morocco thus became the first country whose head of state publicly recognized the newly independent United States. Relations were formalized with the Moroccan American Treaty of Friendship. This is why you see a lot of these Moors, they're trying to go back to claiming a Moorish nationality, a Moorish identity because of this treaty. And under this treaty, you get certain rights and certain benefits because of the agreement that Morocco made with America. And as a citizen or so-called citizen, because many people think they're citizens, but they're not really citizens of America, you don't get certain rights. You're treated a certain way. So relations were formalized with the Moroccan-American Treaty of Friendship, negotiated by Thomas Barclay in Marrakech and signed by American diplomats in Europe, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams with Sultan Muhammad III in 1786. So it tells you right here, get a little bit more information on it. All right. Then it says, give you the history. Muhammad III came to power in 1757 and ruled until his death in 1790. Prior to his reign, Morocco had experienced 30 years of internecine battles, instability, and turmoil. During the 33 years of Muhammad rule, Sidi Muhammad ruled, he transformed the politics, the economy, and the society, putting development of international trade high on his agenda and restoring power to the Sultanate. He served to quickly bring respect to Morocco on the international scene. Central to his pursuit of international trade was the negotiation of agreements with foreign commercial powers. He began seeking one with the United States before the war with Great Britain was settled in 1783, and welcomed Thomas Barclay's arrival to negotiate in 1786. The treaty signed by Barclay and the Sultan, then by Jefferson and Adams, was ratified by the Confederation Congress in July 1787. So these are official documents. They're going to tell you something very, very interesting also. It was reaffirmed by the Sultan in 1803 when the USS Constitution, Nautilus, New York, and Adams engaged in a gunboat diplomacy as part of the First Barbary War. At the time, independent corsairs and pirates were using Morocco's ports as safe harbors between raids on American and European shipping. The treaty has withstood transatlantic stresses and strains for more than 234 years, making it the longest unbroken treaty relationship in United States history. Now we know that America, they will break some treaties. So how is it that this treaty is the longest unbroken treaty in the United States history? That was done with Morocco, that was done with these Moors. And a lot of your Moors are Hebrews. They are either Hebrews or they come from the seed of Abraham. I want to read the last part again. The treaty has withstood transatlantic stresses and strains for more than 234 years, making it the longest unbroken treaty relationship in United States history. It was the Moors who were over here running around sleeping with all the white women, while a lot of our people were enslaved. It was a lot of the Moors that was helping to bring our people over here. It was the Moors that was teaching them the system of the transatlantic slave trade. Because remember, before you had the transatlantic slave trade, you had the Arab slave trade. Now remember, America declared its independence, adopted by the Continental Congress on July 4th, 1776. The 13 American colonies, the modern day, because they were already colonies before those colonies. It was in 1776 officially. Well, if we go back, it says in December 1777. So not even a whole year later, this was officially and publicly done. Now we know that if that's the case, then it was already in the works. It was already in the works. So they understood the significance of international trade and being recognized as a nation on the large scale of different things. And while they were doing all this and making agreements with America as a new nation, the key to this is understanding who America rebelled against. And then you'll understand why Morocco supported them. Morocco is primarily Muslim. And they're Moors. So when you understand all this, you understand why they were so willing to help them and why this has been the longest standing treaty in American history. So America declared its independence officially in July 4th, 1776. Okay, we got to come back to this. Observations concerning the increase of mankind. 1751. 1751. So Benjamin Franklin wrote this in 1751. All right, we already know what it's going to say, but we got to look at it. Let's scroll down. I think it's point number 20 something. And even if we go to point number 21, you see it says something about the expulsion of the Moors. It speaks about the Moors. Right? Let's read it. The importation of foreigners into a country that has as many inhabitants as the present employments and provisions of subsistence will bear will be in the end no increase of people, unless the newcomers have more industry and frugality than the natives, and then they will provide more sustenance and increase in the country, but they will gradually eat the natives out. Nor is it necessary to bring in foreigners to fill up any occasional vacancy in a country, for such vacancy, if the laws are good, will soon be filled by natural generation. Who can now find the vacancy made in Sweden, France, or other warlike nations by the plague of heroism 40 years ago, in France by the expulsion of the Protestants, in England by the settlement of her colonies, or in Guinea by a 100 years exploitation of slaves, that has blackened half America. That has blackened half America. By what? By the exploitation of slaves. 100 years of exploitation of slaves that made America darker than what it was. And we know what the native inhabitants of the Americas look like. When you go look up Native American, it tells you the copper-colored races. And then he goes on, he says, the thinness of inhabitants in Spain is owing to national pride and idleness and other causes, rather than to the expulsion of the Moors or to the making of new settlements. So you're pretty much saying, like, we don't need to bring these people over here. We can, pretty much grow our own people and then, take over, because we bring them over here. There already are a lot of them, and we are the minority, meaning them. If we bring them over here, then they're pretty much going to genocide us out. I mean, that's just the way it goes. What I think they call genetic annihilation. And we go down, and we go to the last point, number 24, which leads me to add one remark, that the number of purely white people in the world is proportionally very small. This is in 1751. So do we think from 1751 to 1777 that the number of white people just grew exponentially that fast? No. We can prove that. So in 1776, when we're talking about Europe and the monarchy and everything, this group of modern day founding fathers, they rebelled against black monarchy with the help of other black nations in the context of what we're speaking about, specifically the Moors, Morocco, a lot of these Ishmaelites, and all these other nations that became confederate against Israel. I'm giving it away, but you get my point. All Africa is black or tawny. Asia chiefly tawny. America exclusive of the newcomers, wholly so. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion, as are the Germans also. Germany, that's Europe. Part of Europe, right? The Saxons only accepted, who with the English make the principal body of white people on the face of the earth. When they're talking about English, they're talking about their English people. Because there were other English people around there. You have to be able to discern between the two when you are studying history. So, in 1751, he said, hey, Europe, Spain, Italy, the French, Russia, the Swedes, they are generally what we call swarthy, black, dark. In 1751, I want you to really understand that. So again, coming all the way to 1776, are we to believe that the number of white people grew that much that they outnumbered the black people who are already dominant in regard to numbers? Y'all keep on believing that we are the minority. Remember, I showed you according to law what a minority is. I showed y'all. I may show you again. So according to law, a minority is the state or condition of a minor infancy, the smaller number of votes of a deliberative assembly opposed to majority. The state or condition of a minor infancy. Keep that in mind. So we have to look at the opposite of minority, because it's a minor or infancy. So when they're talking about the minority people, they're talking about people who they consider minors, who they consider infants, and an infant is somebody that's under the control of somebody else, which makes sense when you read the definition of majority according to law, according to United States law. Full age, the age at which by law a person is entitled to what? To the management of his own affairs and to the enjoyment of civic rights, hence civil rights. Do blacks have civil rights? No, because if that's the case, then we wouldn't be fighting for them, would we? We wouldn't be fighting for them. So they don't consider you a majority. They don't consider you a full age. See, y'all think majority when you think majority, when you say majority, you think something. When they say majority, they're thinking something else. So then you get confused because you're like, oh no, we're not this, we're not that. They're not talking about population wise. They know that the black, brown people are the majority in regards to collectively on the face of the earth. That's why they define it the way that they define it. Does it say anything have to do with necessarily race? No. They believe that you don't have the right to manage your own affairs because you are a minor, you're an infant. And it tells you the opposite of minority. The opposite of minority. You can't manage your own affairs. You don't get the enjoyment of civic rights, which falls under being a full, legal, and lawful citizen, which they don't see you as. Then we go over here to prove the point even more. What is a minor? An infant or person. An infant or person. So you could be a grown man or a grown woman, and they can still consider you an infant, hence a minor, who is under the age of legal competence. They say, oh, he's incompetent. You can't stand for yourself. A term derived from the civil law, which describes a person under a certain age as less than so many years. So they say, one less than 25 years. But also, look what it says. Also, of less consideration, lower, a person of inferior condition. Do they consider us inferior condition? Yes, they do. So they consider us a minor or a minority, a inferior people. So, hey, you can't decide for yourself. We must decide for you. Then all we got to do is continue to make the connections. What is inferior according to law? One who, in relation to another, has less power and is below him. You shall be the tail and not the head. One who is bound to obey another. You're subject to them. They're not subject to us. Law who makes a law is the superior. We're not making the laws. He who is bound to obey it, the inferior. Y'all think y'all actually have some rights here in America, didn't you? By law, it is bound that we are the inferior people because we are subject to them, to obey their laws, to do what they say do, to pay taxes to them. This is what they're talking about when they're talking about minority. They're not talking about minority in the sense of the race or group of people. Like, the numbers don't even make sense, y'all. You're not making any sense. If in 1751, Benjamin Franklin and so many others told you that the world was predominantly black, and then in 1776, you must prove to me that, all of a sudden, the white people took over just that fast. When today in 2021, we know that the world is predominantly black people. Because they're not defining minority and majority how you think they are. I just proved it to you. In regards to race, numbers, we are the majority, but in regards to law, we are the minority. Because they're the ones making the laws, they're the ones making the rules. It was black people who was doing all this. And they help them, this minority, in the sense of the number of people, these small group of white people in comparison to everybody else, they help them to come against Israel. All right, so we know about the American Revolutionary War, but we're going to read a little bit about it. It says the American Revolutionary War, April 19th, 1775 to September 3rd, 1783, also known as the Revolutionary War or the American War of Independence, was initiated by delegates from 13 American colonies of British America in Congress against Great Britain. The war was fought over the issue of American independence from the First British Empire. Engagements took place in North America, the Caribbean Sea, and in the seas surrounding England, the North Sea, the Irish Sea, and the English Channel. From their founding in the 17th century, British North American colonies were largely left to govern themselves under charters granted by the English Stuart kings. King James and his family. They're the ones that gave them the charter and said, hey, let these people govern themselves. So you see how things progressively got worse. Because when the Stuart house fell, then you had these other houses, they came in, and then things got worse because they started to tax them more and more and more and more, and they wanted more control. And then this what led to this war. It says they traded with the mother country primarily in Boston, Philadelphia, Charleston, Bermuda, Bahamas, and Jamaica, and with various other colonies and European powers via their Caribbean, however you pronounce that word. So remember, in 1751, Benjamin Franklin was saying, hey, Europe and all these different places, they're black or tawny. So you got to prove to me that these people, during this time period, they were white, and prove to me that white people, the founding fathers, rebelled against their own people. You got to prove that to me. You can't, because history does not support that. We got the actual records that state what these people look like. The Stamp Act and Townshend Act provoked colonial opposition and unrest, leading to the 1770 Boston Massacre and 1773 Boston Tea Party. When Parliament imposed the Intolerable Acts in spring 1774 upon Massachusetts, 12 colonies sent delegates to the First Continental Congress to draft a petition to the king and organize a boycott of British goods. Fighting broke out on 19th of April, 1775. So we're not going to read all that, but they're just going back and forth. They were going back and forth, back and forth. But I want to show you something that I saw in this. We're going to go down here, and it tells you the belligerents. That's why you got to be careful with those words, because a belligerent, according to law, has something to do with war, not just what you have been taught to think. Oh, it's something to do with alcohol. No. It's something to do with war. So it gives both sides. You got Great Britain and the loyalists, and you got the United States and the 13 colonies, right? And then you go down here, the combatants. It gives you some of the American natives and some of the tribes that were fighting with the crown, with the royal crown. And also with America, look at this. You also have American natives. You have a lot of groups, a lot of tribes fighting with America. Now you can go into history and find out why they were split. We're not going to do that in this video. But the modern day founding fathers of the 13 colonies that we know about today, because again, there were 13 colonies before that. There were many colonies before that. They were rebelling against the crown, monarchy, rulership. When everything started to fall apart, a lot of them, they got out of there and they came over to America. And then they changed their names. But their names were just a play on something that connected them back to when they was in Europe or Ireland, Scotland, and these different places. And then you had these modern day Queen Elizabeth and this royal family. They stepped in and then they took over. And now they're sitting on the throne and everything like they are literally royalty. They were not originally there. The history does not support that. We got the family crest and everything. We got the official records that show you that black monarchy was all throughout Europe. But it was starting to fall apart because of war. In the time of war, people get out of there if it get real bad. And also the king, the monarchy of Britain wasn't as strong as it used to be because that was the curse upon our people. And so it just eroded and got worse and worse and worse. Same thing that happened back in 70 AD. And also what happened with Nebuchadnezzar. War broke out, our people got out of there, and then most of us, our people were killed, we went into captivity, or we went into hiding. You see what I'm saying? History always repeats itself. So in Islam, not the Moorish Islam, but it's connected directly, no matter what they tell you. It says Ishmael is a highly regarded Ishmael is a highly regarded person in the Quran. Ishmael enjoined upon his people worship and almsgiving and was acceptable in the sight of his Lord. The Quran mentions Ishmael with other people like Elisha, Jonah, and Lot, who are considered righteous, good, or chosen. Abraham and Ishmael are said to have built the foundations of the Kaaba. They were raising the foundations of the house. Meccans and most Arabs at the time of Muhammad believed that Ishmael settled in Mecca, was their ancestor, and built with Abraham the Kaaba, which they revered from old times. The Kaaba, it was already there. It was already there. That's why when Muhammad came along, he just took all that and he mixed it together. These different idols. Now we know that Abraham would not have built that because Abraham wasn't fooling with no idol worship. He wasn't fooling with no idol worship. Now I can see Ishmael doing it, and then Abraham coming and telling him like no, or Abraham and Ishmael building something and then Ishmael taking and doing something he had no business with it. I can see that happening. But Abraham and Ishmael did not get together and were building, in the Kaaba with all these false idols, false gods. The story of the Abraham and his wives, Sarah and Hagar, plays an important role in Islamic tradition. These are the things they don't tell you. Abraham conceives a son with Hagar when Sarah is unable to bear children. Then after many years, Sarah miraculously gives birth to Isaac. After some time, upon God's command, Abraham sends Hagar and Ishmael to the desert with God's promise of protection. The Quran takes a special interest in Hagar and her son. I wonder why. I'm about to tell you. Through whom Arabs trace their connection to Abraham. Each year, during the Hajj, the ritual pilgrimage in Mecca, pilgrims reenact Hagar's desperate search for water for her infant son. So when they're talking about this pilgrimage to Mecca, this Hajj and everything, this is what they're reenacting. Running 7 times between 2 hills and drawing water from the well of Zamzam, said to have sprung miraculously from the dry earth at the baby Ishmael's feet. They don't tell you all that though, do they? You see what's going on? So we go down here, and it tells you descents of Ishmael. Muhammad is considered, and this is well-known history. Like when you study this out, they always trace Muhammad's lineage directly back to Abraham and Hagar. Muhammad traces his lineage back to Ishmael. Muhammad is considered to be one of the many descendants of Ishmael. The oldest extant biography of Muhammad, compiled by Ishaq and edited by so-and-so, and it gives the lineage and everything. It says the Quran, however, does not have any genealogies. It was well known among the Arabs that Quraysh were the descendants of Ishmael. I know who they're referring to because we have covered them in a video before. Believing in one supreme God, circumcision, and other traditions such as pilgrimage common among Arabs as far as Yemen all point to the same conclusion. And it's the history shows that they these people that start with a Q, do not pronounce that, but we're going to look at them in a second. They are the descendants of Ishmael, where Muhammad came from. So Muhammad traces his lineage all the way back to the Ishmaelites. And we know the Ishmaelites, they mingle their seed with Esau. And Esau is not the white man. Esau is not the white man. This is why, one reason why they hate us so much. This is one reason why the Arabs hate us so much, because they know who we are. And they were helping Morocco and these other nations, which is why you have the Arab slave trade that came before the transatlantic slave trade. Where if you go read about the Arab slave trade, it tells you specifically. It don't say Hebrews like, yeah, Hebrew. But when you look at the name, you like, oh, these are Hebrews. When you study it out, that they were primarily trading and selling because they knew who we were and they know who we are today. All right, so you see the name. Right, we're not going to read all of it. But you see right here where it says Adonite and Kedorite. So we're going to look at Kedorite because there's a connection between the two. And it says the Kedorite kingdom, or Kedar, was a largely nomadic ancient Arab tribal confederation, described as the most organized of the northern Arabian tribes. At the peak of its power in the 6th century BCE, it had a kingdom and controlled a vast region in Arabia. Biblical tradition holds that the Kedarites are named for Kedar. I think in the Bible it's also with a K, the second son of Ishmael mentioned in the Bible's book of Genesis, where there are also frequent references to Kedar as a tribe. So this is where they trace their lineage back. Are you making the connection? Do you see why Muhammad of Morocco helped America and was the first to publicly recognize them as a nation? During this time period where slavery was going around, they was trading, not only our people but other people. All right, so why is all this important? I don't know if it shows up on y'all's screen, but my screen is black. It's nighttime mode because it is. It's about 11:38, 11:40 my time as I record this part. So it says in Psalms 83, "Keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation." So all the nations, they came together and they said, hey, let's get together, and they're conspiring against God to cut them off and cut his people off from what? From being a nation. Because when you are a nation, you have certain rights. Nations have militaries and everything. You can't treat a nation of people a certain way because there are consequences. There are greater consequences to it. And why? That the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites. The very people we're talking about today, a lot of your Moors. You're going to even see Israelites in here that are part of this. Of Moab, of the Hagarites, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assur is also is joined with them. They have hope in the children of Lot. Selah. Assur, like, come on now, it's Assur. This is direct family right here, Assur. That's direct family. And he has come together to come against we as a people known as Israel. All these nations. So a lot of your Moors, they are from these different lineages. A lot of your Moors. That's why they keep on trying to get you to attach yourself to their beliefs, to America and all these different places. So you can give up your birthright because they believe the birthright is theirs. Because they know when we come together as a nation through the Lord Jesus Christ, when Christ does it, it's a wrap for all of them. They will be subject to us. They will be subject to us. So, y'all need to be careful. Y'all need to be careful because y'all keep on thinking this New World Order is, the white folks thing. No. It's your own people that's going to turn against you. It's your own people that's going to turn against you just like they did Christ. And y'all going to be looking stupid because you didn't want to listen when people trying to warn you, because you want to side with somebody simply because they got black skin. Yet it's the black skin that look like yours that taught a lot of the white people the system of slavery that they are using today. They just, you know what I'm saying, create their own little thing or whatever. But there's nothing new under the sun. So all these nations, all these people you hear talking, a lot of them are setting you up for the New World Order because they know who you are. They know who you are. They know what God they worship. And they want you to worship their God under the guise of it's the one true living God. So when that guy was talking about the New World Order and everything, in that case, and I watched the whole video, but most of it, I still got like an hour left. He's telling the truth. The New World Order is not how y'all think it's going to play out, what you think is going to be. A lot of it, yeah, but it's a lot of pieces that y'all are missing that are important pieces. And I'm trying to give you those pieces so you can be aware of these different things, so hopefully you don't get sucked off into it. But with that being said, God bless each and every one of you in Jesus Christ's name. As always, stay focused for Jesus. And as you know, the truth is not debated. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagarites, that's straight from the lineage of Abraham. We know who the Moabites come from. That's family through Lot.
Thanks for waking up with us.
12.